Hello everyone, nubkeks here. Welcome back to Nub Raids. We are on the Raid Shadow Legends test server for something a little bit crazy. You guys have probably heard about this composition going around, or compositions like this. What I'm bringing you here today is a composition that can do over 1,000 million damage on Hydra. That's right, 1,000 million. I actually, is a billion? I think a billion's a million, Millie. What is a billion? I'm gonna Google this right now. What is a billion? We gotta get this. A billion, a very large amount of something. Great. 1,000 and a million. How many millions are in a billion? 1,000. Okay, it is a billion damage. Great. Confirmed right here for you right now. I'm learning obvious facts live on stream. But basically, the way that this works is very simple. I actually started this run out, by the way, just going on auto. Then I started to go a bit more. You can see I actually start targeting this head. I started to do a little bit more targeting as we were going, especially as we got towards the end, and I realized I could do that billion damage. How does this work? What is going on with this team? Well, it's all about this little fellow right here, the Corpulent Cadaver, who comes in with this A1 that inflicts additional damage if this champion is under a shield buff. The damage is equal to 30% of the value of the shield. We're going to start slow, right? We're 20 turns in, only about 3 million damage. It's pretty terrible, but this is going to ramp up. How does this work? What are the necessary champions? Well, the most important champion to have with us for this is, of course, Brogni. What does Brogni do? Let's zip over to Brogni in a second. We'll jump back to the run. It's just ramping up anyway. Brogni's A2 increases the value of shield buffs on all allies by 30% of the damage that he does. So, Brogni built for damage, you're going to see whenever he does that A2, those shields are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's particularly powerful, especially when we have decapitated heads. It's very, very strong. So look, you can actually see that A1 from Corpulent Cadaver is starting to do pretty good damage, right? It's starting to hit pretty hard. You might have spotted right there as well how hard we hit this head. Now, one thing about this head right here, look how hard we're hitting. He has the respawn buff, which reduces the damage you receive. However, this does not reduce the damage that Corpulent Cadaver does with his A1. In fact, there's a few quirks about the A1 from Corpulent Cadaver. Number one, it is not reduced by the Hydra respawn buff, which normally massively reduces your damage by like, what, 75 or 85%, something crazy. Isn't affected. Does the same amount of damage on weak hits. So he doesn't need to crit, doesn't care what affinity they are, doesn't matter. It also doesn't seem to care about the decapitated head, so you don't do any bonus damage from what I can tell by hitting decapitated head. So that is something that is good to note. There you can see stuff is starting to get good here. The idea of this composition, the sweet spot for this composition, you'll see when we get to it, is when you get to the point where you build a shield up big enough that you can just start one-shotting heads. That is when things get really strong, because the more you decapitate heads, the more Brogni gets to use the damage bonus against decapitated heads to grow your shield more, and this thing snowballs. Now, the other essential or fairly important part of this composition, and where there's a little bit of variety, I have 3 buff extenders, 2 Lanicus the Chosen and 1 Krisk. So I think generally speaking, you do want to have 3 buff extenders, and I do have both of the Lanicus are in reflex set as well to give them more cooldown. They also do ally attack, brings in, I think it's 3 random allies. If that brings in Corpulent Cadaver, hey, we're happy. That's a huge amount of extra damage, so that's brilliant. So we're sort of hoping for that to happen. You can do some variety with this. So for example, I have seen people use different buff extenders. You can use different buff extenders. It doesn't have to be these ones. I've seen people use reset champions like Yumiko's. Possibly you could use a Kaimar. I did try Kaimar because I have only 1 Yumiko. I didn't find Kaimar to be very good because Kaimar he has an AoE attack on his A1 and A2, so he gets feared a lot, and that's quite a problem, at least at the start of this fight. Not at the end of the fight, but at the start of the fight, it's definitely a problem. So you see right here, we're just going to try kill these dudes off. And again, we're just trying to get to that sweet spot. We do not care too much about this poison cloud, at least from Cadaver. As you can see, bam, right there. He doesn't care if there's a poison cloud out or not. He basically does maximum damage. And that's how this thing works. And 60 turns in, 35 million damage. I should say, by the way, I did run this on hard. And it didn't quite work for me because I'm lacking the stats. I'm lacking the gear. So this run here you're seeing is on normal. And that's something that I will point out to you straight away before we start getting to the snowball where the numbers get insane. This is very gear intensive. Like, you need an absolute metric ton of speed to be really good on your buff extenders plus reflex set. You need a metric ton of damage on Brogni to make the shield growth good enough. And yeah, that's sort of the main thing. The final piece we have in here is Michinaki. This was an idea from Ian Gaming in content creator chat. He shared a team that he used, which was very like this one. But Michinaki gives you AoE Hex, and I think that's pretty good. I think you could also use someone in a curse set. I just don't have any cursed set. But the Hex actually adds a ton of damage. You'll see that a little bit later on. But yeah, what I essentially, at the start of this fight, I was just trying to kill off Head of Suffering as much as possible. Really, to remove his AoE damage reduction so that Brogni's thing would be stronger. When we got a little bit further on, as you can see now, we're hitting that sweet spot, guys. We're hitting the sweet spot right about now. 70 turns in, we're up to 60 million damage right now. The snowball is starting to begin. We're at that spot where we can start one-shotting heads, which is really nice. So let's see. Champion's been eaten, broken free, no problem. And bam, Corpulent Cadaver. He's now hitting for over 1 million. Yeah, he's hitting for 1 million per hit. And that's doing a lot of damage. So a couple of optimizations, and I was sort of half paying attention for the first bar of the run, so I wasn't perfect at it. But optimizations, if you wanted to play this on manual, that'd be perfect. But basically, killing off the fastest head every time they respawn in. This is something I realized, right? Is that you will hit a turn limit. So for example, right here, 82 turns in, 70 million damage. Uh-oh, look, Corpulent Cadaver. He's going to be devoured in 18 turns. That's bad. Nubkeks, how are you getting over a billion damage with this team? You're not even close to it right now. Well, here's the thing. We will now hit the sweet spot where pretty much the heads will never actually get a turn. So every time a head respawns, target the fastest one, kill it off. You could even be careful with the fear head, which can mess you up a little bit, but kill it off, and they never get a turn, like so. So we have now hit the sweet spot, and with us now having enough damage to one-shot these heads, with us keeping them squishy as long as possible, we can just start blasting out those A2s on Brogni as much as possible. Again, refresh accessories, right? Getting a couple of A2s back-to-back on Brogni will massively up the damage of this key. I don't have any, I don't think, but it massively ups the damage. Refresh accessories on Lanicus. I have a few of those. Those make it, again, massively better. More ally attacks, more turn meter. All good, right? If you pull in your boy to ally attacks, you're laughing. Yeah, again, this is sort of how it works. Like I said, I did a little bit of manualing here, which I think is actually probably not essential. I was a little bit scared of getting feared and stuff like that, but I don't think it actually matters because Corpulent Cadaver is going to just one-shot the fear head, which removes fears from you anyway. Poison Cloud went up, it wouldn't matter. It happens anyway. I did find that one thing to watch out for is obviously this Devour timer. We've now hit that sweet spot where it will never run out. We're, by the way, over 100 million damage now. You'll hit a sweet spot where you can just stop them pretty much ever taking turns. Head of Mischief will sometimes take turns because he redirects single target hits, and we're doing single target hits here with Corpulent Cadaver. We have to wait for Michinaki to get the Hex back up. So that's something that will, Mischief will sometimes get a turn. That's just something you're going to have to deal with. And that's fine. I think he gets a few turns during this run, but we never get Corpulent Cadaver devoured for the rest of the run. He's totally fine. It's ridiculous. But this Devour timer, the champions it will target will be random. After, it will target your highest crit damage person first, which should be Brogni. After that, it's going to target randomly. You need to have it not target Corpulent Cadaver until you get to this point where you can basically control these heads. That's super important. And then I guess one final little tip here is, for example, Michinaki as our Hexer. He also brings decreased defense to make Brogni hit harder, which is really important as well. You could use Lydia. Lydia is another common one. Lydia with a hex set, a curse set, for example, could work. But yeah, one little tip is because hex duplicates that single target damage, is to target the head that does not have hex when they're decapitated. So you can see right here, whenever we hit this head, we're going to have a big chunk of... Okay, we're not going to see it right now because it's gone, but you might have noticed whenever we hit one of these heads. So for example, right now, I should target the head on this side because the others have hex. So we want to duplicate all that damage with hex. If we target one that already has hex, we're going to miss out on potentially a big chunk of damage. So if we're hitting for 2 million, right, we're doing at least 200,000 to each of these other heads with the hex. Like it adds up to quite a lot, to the point where I think towards the end I was hitting for like 5 million and hex was doing probably almost 1 million damage, like to the other. Like it really adds up a ton very, very quickly. Now you can see we're about 100 turns in and we've done 200 million damage. Let's up the speed a little bit more, shall we? Let's rip through this so you can see. But I think that basically covers everything there is to cover. You can see how the composition works. It's very gear intensive. The more gear you have, particularly on Brogni, to make him hit harder, will build the shields up more and it will exponentially ramp even stronger. The more speed you get on the Lanakis is going to be really important. I also did have both Krisk and one of the Lanikas as mischief tanks, and that's important as well. To stop Head of Mischief stealing your buffs. I found that was more important on the higher difficulties. On this difficulty, it's not so bad because you just sort of one-shot everything. You can see we can pretty much almost one-shot these heads, mostly before they get a turn. Again, speed becomes important to try to control that. And we're just blasting through. Like if we zip on, let's zip on further towards the end here. And you can see we're hitting over 1 billion damage, guys. We're over 1 billion right now. And if it were not for this turn limit, this key could go indefinitely, essentially. What would make it end would be if one of the heads eventually got to devour Corping Cadaver. Like, so for example, right here, Head of Mischief, like I said, will eventually get some turns. Or he'll eventually resist Hex and you can't hit him. He'll get turns. He will eventually devour you. And that will eventually make it run out. But yeah, you can see just sort of how hard we are hitting. You can see just that damage number jumping up whenever we get these hits in. There we go. Try take him out. I think I actually made a mistake there. Bam, doesn't matter. Because we're approaching the end. And yeah, we'll get to see the final damage I was able to do with this team. Let me also say, this is on the test server. Am I going to build this team on the live server? I don't think I'll bother personally. I'm really expecting this to get nerfed because it is so ridiculous. It's so far beyond what anything else can do. So I'm sort of expecting it to be nerfed, but if they don't nerf this, this is clearly the team to build if you can. And you can push this up into hard difficulty and then get a double multiplier. And you can easily do, I've seen people doing 2 billion damage on hard. I think with extremely good champs, I think Victor Tez, who first showed this team off, he was I think he was the one who came up with the variant of this team, which was obviously the Demon Lord Clan Boss world record team. He has crazy gear. He was able to do it on Nightmare, which is insane. It's insane. I think it's very difficult, though, to do it on Nightmare. You need just ridiculous gear, empowerments, and all the rest. I think it's very, very hard. But there we go. On my account, I was able to do 1.6 billion damage to normal Hydra. It's only normal, but still, it's 1.6 billion damage. Corping Cadaver at 903 million. Let me show you these champions and what we did with them. So, Brogni. Again, you could probably improve this. Item lethal, probably lethal cruel, I think is the way to go. And refresh accessories to make a huge difference. You're trying to get, you can see my stats aren't great at all. You're trying to get his attack really high, his crit damage really high, 100% crit rate. And then you need a good chunk of speed as well. I suppose you could probably use the Lanikus, increase crit rate and keep it up all the time. I decided not to do that just because of the Devours going around and having to manually redo it. I didn't bother, but you could probably, because you're buff extending, you could probably do a Lanikus A3 for increased crit rate and lower the crit rate on people. But I'm actually not that interested in this composition. I think it's kind of dumb. I'm just doing it because it's ridiculous and I feel like I need to give you guys a video. So yeah, I think you probably could optimize that a bit more. But yeah, I think lethal and cruel, probably to ignore enemy defense is good. His base attack is low, so that's tricky. Ascensions with flat attack on obviously the rings and crit damage on the neck, attack on the banner would add up to a lot. For his masteries, I did give him Helm Smasher as well. We just want him hitting as hard as possible. The damage the other champions are doing doesn't really matter. It's all about Hex and all about Corpulent Cadaver. So those are the Brogni masteries. Lanicus, this was the first. Okay, apparently I forgot to do masteries on this Lanicus. That's okay. I would have given her War Master, I suppose, but I forgot. This Lanicus is coming in like this, so high speed. Again, you prefer to have this even higher, but she is in Reflex, chance to reduce her skill cooldown. We turn off her A3. She only does her A2, which gives us the ally attack, buff extension, and turn meter fill. We want her doing that as much as possible. So reflex, triple refresh. Preferably, you probably want her speed really high. You probably want her to have high resistance because Lanicus with her A1 gives continuous heals. So they will get targeted by Head of Mischief. I actually had this one not built to Mischief Tank and it worked okay. But that's something to note and watch out for. The other Lanicus must be in here. So here's my Mischief Tank Lanicus that I actually use in my main keys in the game. So I haven't updated her gear. So we could improve this, of course, as well. 250 speed, 500 resistance, 100% crit rate. So the idea with her is that she gets these continuous heals on and she's extending them. And that's sort of how that works. She has War Master and extending buffs. That's this Lanicus. Again, if you were to super optimize this, more refresh accessories. Actually, I've got two. A third one would help. And more speed, a lot more speed. I'd be looking at like 300 or so speed, probably. And you could drop the resistance to what? Like probably 400 for normal or hard, roughly. Something like that. Maybe 450. Yeah, maybe 450 for hard, just to be safe. It's kind of bad if the head steals those buffs that you've got going on. We have then... where's Krisk? Krisk, our other buff extender. He might be in the vault. In the vault. No, I'm just blind. Am I? Maybe he is in the vault. I'm doubly blind in two different ways. There he is. He's in the vault. Krisk. I'd say probably ideally you put Krisk in a shield set to get a shield set for your team. I'm not 100% sure if that's essential because he's giving you shield anyway, but I think you do definitely want the shield set. I think the way it works is that Brogni, his A2 actually grows both the skill shield, but also the artifact shield as well. So you definitely want a shield set and not a bolster set. That will expire and fall off. I think you want a shield set and one of these. Brogni does give you just a shield as well, so you don't need the Krisk one, I don't think, but something like that. I'm not 100% sure how all this stuff works, but I was running Krisk. He is in just Perception gear, and he is built like this. Again, probably ideally you'd want refresh on Krisk, I suppose. I think you'd probably run him in a shield set, and this is like this. So this is more of a generic Krisk build. This is my normal Krisk build. It's not optimized for this, but just to give you a concept there of what is happening. He's kind of nice. He gives the decreased speed, which is quite helpful, and the increased speed as well, which is helpful. And he mischief tanks too, so it's nifty to have. Then we had, of course, is that everyone except for Corpse and Cadaver? Oh, Brogni, yeah, I've shown you Brogni. We just need to see Michinaki and Cadaver. So I actually put Michinaki, was it this one? I actually put him in a shield set. You might be better off putting him in Relentless set to get more of these hexes out. But I'm not sure if that's important. Him taking more turns might actually be bad because you actually want him taking less turns. It's taking away from the potential Corpulent Cadaver turn. So I'm not 100% sure about that. I put him in shield set anyway, so we have that shield going into it. He had these masteries and he was built like this, so fairly random, honestly. Decent accuracy so we can land his debuffs, but you only need about like 200 or so for... Normal is like less than like 200, I think. Hard is 250 or something. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. Check the Hell Hades stages tool or check the documents pinned. 400 is definitely plenty for Nightmare, so we're a bit overkill there. And then finally, the man of the hour, we have Corpulent Cadaver. I did put him in Stalwart gear right here. In fact, he's got 5 pieces of Stalwart. I should probably find another piece of Defiant. Whoops. Ah, well, it doesn't really matter. The idea with this is take less damage from AoE attacks. The concept was he takes less damage, the shield stays stronger. Counterattack accessories, I think, are pretty good as well. I think you could run him in like retaliation sets, might be good for counterattacks. just to like kill more heads, because the more heads you kill sooner while they are attacking you, the sooner Brogni can ramp damage up, and the sooner you hit that snowball point. And again, you turn off his moves. You just let him A1. I gave him Hero Soul. I don't know if it matters. And I gave him War Master. I don't know, again, if it really matters, this stuff. But I do definitely think Deterrence is great. That can just one-shot the Fear Head when he fears somebody. That's brilliant. And yeah, just basically, that's basically it. So yeah, again, I'm not 100% sure if I have missed anything in terms of optimizing. Let me know, like, if there's a way to make this more optimal with these builds. Like I said, I'm probably not even going to bother building this because I do expect it to be nerfed. But it was fun to build it on the test server and show you guys what we could do, and also to learn what a billion is. So that was good, wasn't it? That was good. We're learning together. Thanks for watching, everyone. Good luck with Hydra Clash. I feel bad if you're going to fight any clans that are able to put together these teams, especially if they can make them work on higher difficulties. Boy, oh boy. I'll see y'all next time. Goodbye.